on the world today. Israel marks Jewish New Year with a second lockdown. Rare hurricane-like storm lashes western Greece, bringing torrential rain and power cuts. U.S. to ban app downloads of TikTok and WeChat in 48 hours. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Akaite Afia. Israel has entered a second nationwide lockdown at the onset of the Jewish holiday season, forcing residents to stay mostly at home amid a resurgence of new coronavirus cases. The new lockdown, which began at 2 p.m. local time and will last 3 weeks, coincides with the start of the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, traditionally a time for large family gatherings and group prayer. Here's more on this and other developments on our COVID-19 Global Update.
The Jewish New Year is traditionally a time for big, festive get-togethers, but a new COVID-19 lockdown means celebrations in Israel will be muted. Under the new restrictions, Israelis must stay within 1 kilometer of their homes, with exceptions for activities such as commuting to work, shopping for essential items, and walking outdoors for exercise. Social distancing rules also greatly restrict numbers allowed in synagogues.
Israeli National Police are implementing a full lockdown across the country from the north to the south. Inside cities and different neighborhoods, more than 7,000 police officers involved in implementing health measures, preventing movements of up to 1 kilometer. And these rules and regulations will continue until the 11th of the month in another 3 weeks' time in order to prevent the spread of COVID-19 across the country.
With the new COVID-19 cases in Israel reaching over 6,000, a record high on Thursday, it has one of the highest infection rates in the world. Meanwhile, with cases spiking around Europe, some areas are implementing new restrictions to fight the pandemic. The British government has announced further restrictions for certain parts of England, including the Northwest, West Yorkshire and Midlands, to tackle rising COVID-19 infection rates. Residents from these areas will be banned from socializing with people outside of their households and support bubble from Tuesday. Health Secretary Matt Hancock says that UK faces a very serious situation and does not rule out another lockdown.
Well, we have seen an acceleration in the number of cases over the last couple of weeks, and we've also sadly seen that the number of people hospitalized with coronavirus is doubling about every 8 days. So we do need to take action.
And in France, local authorities in Nice have banned public gatherings of more than 10 people on beaches and in parks as part of the new measures to fight the spread of the virus. All bars and restaurants will have to close their doors at 12:30 a.m. and all visits in public care homes have been suspended. The World Health Organization has warned that the coronavirus cases are surging alarmingly in Europe, and weekly cases are now more than those reported at the peak of the pandemic.
Well, more on Israel's lockdown now, which makes it the first country globally to impose a second nationwide lockdown. Under the new restrictions, no more than 10 people can meet indoors, while groups of 20 are allowed outdoors. Schools and shopping centers must close. Israelis must stay within 1 kilometer of their homes, with some exceptions including traveling to work or buying essential items. Non-governmental offices and businesses can stay open, but must not offer in-person services. However, supermarkets and pharmacies can remain open to the public. The VOA's Ricky Rosen is in Jerusalem, from where she joins us to discuss Israel's second nationwide lockdown. Ricky, welcome to the program, and first of all, happy holidays to you.
Thank you.
So it's quite unfortunate that Israelis are celebrating the Jewish New Year with the nationwide restrictions. How are they taking this and so far, and what's the level of compliance been?
Well, almost all Israelis are frustrated with this lockdown, and many, if not most, are planning to go against it. For example, tonight is supposed to be the first night of the Jewish New Year, and people traditionally celebrate it with family meals. And so, since there's a lockdown and people couldn't travel to join their families, many people had their family meals last night instead, and it's kind of going against the spirit of the lockdown because they traveled and they were in large gatherings.
Well, so how are Israelis planning on celebrating the New Year with all these restrictions in place now?
People are still going to the synagogues with restrictions, as you said, on how many people can pray together inside. They're also holding many prayer services outside. And as I said, the less religious people treat the Jewish New Year as a time for families to get together. And many people are trying to find loopholes in the new lockdown, in the restrictions, in which they can still go and enjoy their time, their vacation time.
Well, in the past week, new cases have reached daily highs of more than 6,000, and the country's leaders have apologized for their failure to contain the pandemic. So how else is Israel dealing with this surge in cases?
Well, that's part of the problem with the lockdown. Most of the health professionals and politicians admit that they don't really have an answer other than this lockdown. They have already been doing more tests than ever before. They did 150,000 tests, corona tests this week, more than 1 million since the start of the pandemic. And so they can't really increase that pace, and they haven't gotten the contact tracing operations together yet. So they're hoping that just by restricting large gatherings, they can put a dent in the rise of the infection rate.
Well, hopefully that they are successful with that. Ricky, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Still on COVID-19, lockdown measures residents in the English city of Durham say they are frustrated after new measures were imposed at midnight due to a significant rise of COVID-19 cases in the region. The restrictions, which applies to areas in northeast England, prevent multiple households from mixing and hospitality running late in the night. Since then, the government has said it would impose similar restrictions across large parts of central and northern England from Tuesday. New cases of COVID-19 in England almost doubled to around 6,000 per day in the latest week to September 10th, according to new official estimates that are likely to raise speculation about a new national lockdown.
Because on one hand, you've got people who can go on holidays, you've got people who can go into gyms, you've got people who can go into restaurants and pubs up till 10 o'clock at night, but you can't have your own family to your house. I mean, I don't understand it. Where's the sense in it? Where's the logic? There isn't any.
To be honest, I think if we follow the advice and the guidelines and we look at the rate going up, then I think obviously we need to act. I know there's a lot of people with businesses not happy, but I think we need to try and, if we follow the rules and follow the guidelines, then businesses can still open safely.
As I said, unfortunately, I think it's necessary. I think it's necessary for the pubs more than anything, although I don't want to see the pubs closed down because it's people's livelihoods. But when people get inebriated, their senses just go out of the window, and that's late at night, isn't it, when everybody's had too much to drink.
In the United States, TikTok and WeChat will be banned from U.S. app stores from Sunday, unless President Donald Trump agrees to a last-minute deal. The Department of Commerce said it would bar people in the U.S. from downloading the messaging and video sharing apps through any app store on any platform. The Trump administration says the companies threaten national security and could pass user data to China. But China and both companies deny this. All right, well, let's speak more with Michelle Quinn, who is joining us now from San Francisco. Michelle, welcome to the program.
Hi, nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well. So tell us, is the Trump administration really going to ban TikTok, having in mind how popular this app is with the American public and the amount of Americans whose source of income comes from this?
It's a really good question. And I think that today's news shows that the Trump administration is serious. As of Sunday, you won't be able to download the app in the app stores, either the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. So that knocks out a lot of people who might actually be interested in and haven't downloaded yet. There's other questions about whether if TikTok pushes out an update, whether people will be able to actually get it. So I think that the Trump administration with this move this morning is showing that they're serious.
Well, just to clarify, does this ban mean that people who have already downloaded the app will be unable to use it from Sunday?
No, I think you still be able to use it Sunday, and the ban is just at the App Store level. But what the ban says is that anybody doing business with TikTok, and there's a lot of companies and brands on the service, may be in violation of the president's executive order. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens next. You know, if TikTok pushes an update, will I be able to get it? Will companies that promote things on TikTok be able to continue doing that? What will the Treasury Department in the U.S. do about it? And it's right, you're right. There are a lot of people here. I think there's about 1,500 people who actually work for TikTok in the United States. We heard this week from a judge that they will still be able to get paid without violating the executive order.
So what exactly does the Trump administration want to see in the deal that could hold off this ban?
That's a really good question. What we do know is that the Trump administration is reviewing the deal. We don't really know the exact details of the deal yet. And will it satisfy the Trump administration? They say they have security concerns about TikTok. You know, where will user data live? Who will be in charge of watching it and making sure that it's not going back to China, or that there's any backdoors that Chinese military or Chinese officials might be able to use TikTok for. One of the few interesting details is that there might be an advisory board made up possibly of a U.S. national security person who would oversee this whole process. I think we're in new territory. We've never been here before with a tech company.
Well, this definitely is new territory, but we'll be keeping our eyes on the situation. Thanks so much for joining us today, Michelle.
Thank you.
China says it is conducting military exercises near the Taiwan Strait to protect its sovereignty as a top U.S. official visits Taiwan. The live fire drills take place as relations between Beijing and Washington sour and the U.S. shores up its support of Taiwan. China regards self-ruled Taiwan as a breakaway province. Keith Cratch is the highest level official from the U.S. State Department to visit the island in decades. China's Defense Ministry spokesman Ren Guoquang has accused the U.S. and Taiwan of stepping up collusion, frequently causing disturbances. A rare hurricane-like storm is lashing islands in western Greece, bringing torrential rain and power cuts. Storm Ianos is described as a Mediterranean hurricane, a phenomenon that first appeared in Greece in 1995. The cyclone is moving eastwards, so at the weekend winds, now up to 117 kilometers per hour, are set to hit the Peloponnese, then Athens and Crete. There are reports of flooded streets, power cuts, and transport disruption on the islands of Kefalonia, Zakynthos, and Ithaca. According to reports off the western Peloponnese, a boat believed to be carrying 55 migrants is in distress, and the Greek Coast Guard has asked nearby ships to assist. Still ahead on The World Today. Scientists win IG Nobel Award for giving an alligator helium and making it shout. We'll have a listen after this break. Stay with us. Thanks so much for staying with us. You're watching The World Today on Channels Television. Over in Vietnam, tropical storm Nul has made landfall, killing at least one person and triggering heavy rain in the central parts of the country. The storm hit the tourist city of Da Nang and veered north to Toi Tien Hue province before entering Laos around Friday afternoon. The storm has killed at least one person, injured another, while downing trees and damaging hundreds of houses. The government had previously made plans to evacuate up to 500,000 people when the storm was forecast to have wind speeds of up to 135 kilometers an hour. However, the weather agency on Friday downgraded Nul to a low-pressure system, though warned it could still dump up to 9.8 inches of rain in parts of central Vietnam, potentially triggering floods and landslides.
Và được sự chi viện của quan tỉnh. Hiện nay cùng với mặt trận tổ quốc các đoàn thể thì hiện nay đã tập trung cao để khắc phục sớm cho bà con.
A UN investigator has warned of the possibility of another Iron Curtain descending in Europe during an urgent debate on the human rights situation in Belarus in Geneva. Anais Marin, UN Special Reporter on the human rights situation in Belarus, describes the situation in Belarus as catastrophic. Her speech was interrupted several times by objections from other UN members, including Russian, Belarusian, and other delegations who called for the broadcast to stop.
Excellencies, let's not allow another Iron Curtain to descend on the European continent. Border closures will not stop international scrutiny. In view of the seriousness of the reported abuses, let me recall that human rights violations are not an internal affair. They are of interest to the international community. The response of law enforcement agencies was again violent and disproportionate. To date, more than 10,000 people have been abusively arrested for taking part in peaceful protests, adding to some 1,500 already arrested since the crackdown started back in April. Most of them are now free, and I call on the authorities to immediately release and drop all politically motivated charges against those who remain arbitrarily detained. I have been informed of allegations of rape, electrocution, and other forms of physical and psychological torture. What is more, the perpetrators seem confident that they will not be prosecuted because of prevailing lawlessness and impunity. Yet it is the responsibility of the Belarusian state to prevent, investigate, and punish these crimes, which are all the more serious because they were committed in a premeditated and organized manner. I call on the authorities to shed full light on these tragic events and to guarantee the right of victims of torture to obtain redress. Given the abuse they suffered, these victims are in such a state of post-traumatic shock that they still require urgent humanitarian aid.
Meanwhile, Belarus opposition leader Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, in a speech at the UN Human Rights Council, demanded the country's authorities end violence against protesters and set up a free and fair presidential election. Tikhanovskaya fled her homeland for Lithuania amid a police crackdown in Belarus following the August 9th presidential election, which official results said incumbent Alexander Lukashenko won by a landslide. Speaking at the same event, Yuri Ambrazevi, Belarus ambassador to the UN in Geneva, said it was not acceptable to use the body to interfere in a country's election.
Demands are simple and completely in line with all basic international norms. We demand to immediately cease violence against peaceful citizens. We demand immediate release of all political prisoners. We demand to allow entry and free movements to the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Belarus. Finally, we demand free and fair elections so the citizens of Belarus can freely choose their government according to the laws of the country. The situation in Belarus demands immediate international attention. Peaceful protesters are being illegally detained, beaten, and raped. Some of the protesters have been found dead.
Also pitching in, Ukraine's foreign minister warned Russia against taking steps that may undermine Belarus's sovereignty and destabilize the region, while Britain called for sanctions on those in Belarus responsible for what the UK says were fraudulent elections.
Ukraine wishes to underline the absolute unacceptability of interfering in Belarus' internal affairs. The right to decide the democratic future of the country belongs exclusively to the people of Belarus. We warn the Russian Federation against taking steps that may lead to undermining political sovereignty of Belarus and thus destabilizing the wider region. It is heartbreaking to watch the footage of our close neighbors viciously beaten down and arbitrarily detained on the streets of their native cities.
We've called for an independent OSCE investigation into the fraudulent election processes and related human rights violations. The UK also supports imposing sanctions against those responsible. We are working with our international partners to hold the Belarusian authorities to account.
Ever wondered what an alligator sounds like after breathing in helium? Well, thanks to an international team of researchers, we now know. It's somewhere between a belch and a grunt. The study, a Chinese alligator in heliox format frequencies in a crocodilian, was honored at this year's IG Nobel Spoof Awards. Winning the award for acoustics, the research is actually a serious scientific experiment designed to understand how alligators communicate. Other 2020 winners included the team that devised a method to identify narcissists by examining their eyebrows, and the group that wanted to see what happened when earthworms were vibrated at a high frequency.
Our question was whether alligators have vocal tract resonances like human speech. And the key is that sound travels faster in helium. This makes the air passages seem shorter, making the resonances higher. So if you breathe helium and the frequencies shift upward, that shows that they're resonances. The hard part is getting an alligator to breathe helium.
Our subject was a Chinese alligator. We recorded her inhaling normal air and heliox, a helium-oxygen mixture. And here we go. Here's one call in air and one call in heliox. They sound different. They look different, and this is evidence that also non-avian reptiles have resonances in their vocalizations.
Well, I definitely never thought I'd hear the sound of an alligator who's just inhaled helium, but it is what it is. Thank you so much for joining us on The World Today. I'm Akaite Afia. Have a great weekend and stay safe.